Good afternoon and welcome to the Chad and Jody Show on the United Hour. How you doing, buddy? How you doing, Jody Alexander?
I'm doing really good. It's about time. We've been talking about this show for such a long time. What's it been? 18 months? It's going on 2 years. We keep saying we'll do this show together. And we
Yeah,
finally
yeah,
got
yeah.
around to it.
It's
Finally,
been
finally. So I'm
it's
excited
been
now.
w-
So,
it's been way too long, so we finally inside with it. Um, Today's
oh,
show though,
definitely. I'm excited to see what's going on.
yeah, today. Well, for those who are wondering, what is the Chad and Jody show all about? The Chad and Jody show, we pretty much going to be talking anything football, anything United related, but we're going to be doing what you call a deep dive into it. So whatever topic we're talking about, we're not going to be just talking about it on the outside. We're going to get down inside. If it's a game, we're going to give you critical analysis. If it's a situation, we're going to give you a little background information, things that you may not necessarily get in the press. We're going to be diving down a little bit. Today, we're looking to talk about the man, Richard Arnold. Because, right now, there's a lot of talk about upheaval in the dressing room and challenges with the coach and coaching staff and players and Harry Maguire and Ronaldo beef and all of that kind of drama. But really and truly, we can't lose sight of what is happening at the club administratively. So I'm just going to start off giving you a brief, very short, thing about the man Richard Arnold. And then we're gonna head across to Jody, and Jody will give us the situation of what exactly how the transition is taking place at the club. Richard Arnold is a British accountant. Yeah, there's that word again, accountant, right? Very similar to what Edward Wood is.
Actually, to be fair, the difference, I'm going to have to defend Richard Arnold here a little bit. Edward would know absolutely nothing about football. Richard Arnold is a football fan as well. So, which is,
Well, Richard, yeah, but he's a professionally. He and Ed does the same thing. They're both accountants. But anyway,
yeah, true.
Richard Arnold, from what, as Jody said, from what I've heard as well, he's a football supporter, and he's definitely into football a lot more than Ed was or
He's
is.
actually a huge Manchester United supporter, so it's
Right?
good
So
to have
that's
someone in that commercial side who is a fan of us.
correct. So, um, Richard Arnold right now is the managing director at Manchester United, but from the 1st of February, Ed Woodward is supposed to be handing over the reins, and Richard Arnold is going to be the chief executive officer at Manchester United. He had started work at Manchester United from since 2008. So Richard Arnold has been with us a little while. He's not a now come. I mean, it's only now his name is really being touted about, but he's been with us for a little while. So Jody, talk to us. What exactly, how is this transition taking place from Ed to Richard Arnold?
Okay, first of all, I want to start with the background of Richard Arnold a little bit, and then we'll talk about the transition, if that's okay with you. Because I feel it's important to know. Obviously, Richard's been with us a long time, but it's good to know who his first mentor was, and that was our last successful person, who was our last CEO, which was David Gill. When David Gill left in 2012, no one has held the title Chief Executive Officer at Manchester United. That's actually then became Vice Executive Chairman, which then fell to the notorious Ed Woodward. Now, let's give you something about. So, his first mentor, obviously, he's had various roles at Manchester United, but since 2012, he was the group managing director for all our commercial success. So, let's say since 2012, I think everyone would agree our commercial success has been nothing but paramount off the field. Where he
If
didn't have a
if
say.
if only our on-field success was as good as our commercial success.
Now, what we do know about Richard Arnold, he is a football fan, and the first comment he came back on, he didn't come out and talk about the commercialism about the club. He talked about restoring its on-field glory, and that's something that I've never heard anyone say in the last decade. So, which was reassuring to know that he is going to do that. Let's talk about the transition. Ed Woodward was supposed to finish his job on the 31st of December. Unfortunately, due to the current upheaval, you can't have a change of manager, then a change of board member, then a senior staff in to change it all up. So it's very, very difficult for them to then replace Ed Woodward. Now, what's then transitioned is that the 1st of February, Richard Arnold will then take the hot seat as the chief executive officer. Now, Ed Woodward will remain at Manchester United in a consultancy role for 2 months to help, obviously, oversee and transition the board. Now, what I generally feel they've actually done this for was someone to oversee the January transfer window. Now, that has actually gone bad in the sense that Joel Glazer, ever since the upheaval, and we knew who was going to be we've known for a while who was going to become new CEO, and we would no longer have a vice executive chairman, made changes to our football side, which then impacted. This is where we had a long upheaval about who was going to be the new manager, interim manager, or what was going to be the situation. Because Man United feel that throughout the last Ed Woodward's tenure, we have overspent, we have bought very, very irrational, we've been very reactionary to the market, and it has cost us a lot of money in the long term. Now, with this, what they've done, when they hired Ralph, the first person to be interviewed was Darren Fletcher and John Murtaugh. And it wasn't Ed or Richard that signed off on Ralph, it was actually Joel Glazer. Now, the reason for that being is just the simple fact of the matter is no longer will the commercial side have influence on footballing decisions. Joel Glazer made sure of that. He puts in a model.
Stick up in there, Jody. So what people have to understand is when Sir Alex left and Gil left, right?
Yep. Ed Woodward controlled everything.
Ed Woodward controlled everything. And he had two gentlemen who did not know anything about football, not just running the commercial side of things, but running the football side of things. Hence the reason most of the players that we went after were players that were known, the Schneiderlins of the world, not Schneiderlin, what's the German guy's name?
Bastian Schweinsteiger.
Schweinsteigers of the world. We went after the big names. And the reason we went after the big names is because regardless of what our scouting network would have said, Ed would have had to sign off on the transfers.
Ed and Matt Judge signed off on the transfers.
Ed and Matt Judge.
Their targets list, and they those guys they got.
Those guys would know the big names. They're not going to know a quality midfielder that is not in a big club somewhere else in the world. So as we have spent the same amount of money, well, a little less than Manchester City, we up there with the spending of Chelsea, we up there with the spending of Real Madrid and Barcelona, and we have had none of the success. Close to $1 billion, a little over $1 billion in 10 years Manchester United has spent. So this, is a transition which will be the wisdom of the ownership to realize, this hasn't been working. We've been spending money and not having the same results. We need to do something different. And hopefully, with Ed leaving at the beginning of February, it is going to be a transition to that. So go ahead.
So going back to where we were, basically ownership then decided that football matters should be handled by football people. So whereas the entire overseeing of the club will fall on Richard Arnold, in terms of transfers, he will have no say. He will never. Matt Judge will never deal with a negotiation ever again, because we've seen how good his negotiations are, and we're basically seeing where it's going to go. Now, Man United, this is where it's got smart, and it looks like a reasoning. It looks like Richard Arnold's wetting his beak already. Ed Woodward's out the role, so he's trying. There seems to be a little bit of a power struggle in terms of what's transfers available this January. Now, it looks like Richard Arnold has made it very clear, because he's going to be taking over the job, it makes no sense for Manchester United to allow Ed Woodward to oversee these transfers. Absolutely none.
Makes sense
so
to me.
What they've done is Richard Arnold has basically tasked Darren Fletcher, John Murtaugh, and Ralph Rangnick to oversee the transfers for this month. Now, here's where the kicker is. and this is where I think it's absolutely brilliant. When they hired Ralph Ragnick, this is what people don't see. Yes, you have an interim manager who's dealing with the coaching aspect till May, June of this year. But 2 years after that, he becomes senior football consultant in charge of transfers, contract negotiations, alongside Darren Fletcher and John Murtagh. So, not only is he our temporary coach, he's the one who's going to be getting us our talent for the next 2 years to build up the club. Now, the reason they also brought him in, Manchester United, the Glazers, you're fully aware they have two franchises, two very large franchises right now. They have the reigning Super Bowl champions, and obviously they have Manchester United. They are looking to expand their football portfolio. And who better to bring in than Ralph Rangnick, who has built the Red Bulls football group. So they are
was a lot of experience in doing that.
Now, the first place they're looking at right now, obviously everyone knows they just bought a cricket franchise. They are actually looking in South America. Now, this is a footballing decision, and it's actually genius. The reason for that being, you get a club in South America, we tap into a talent pool which is ridiculous. You're
just now,
South American
I don't know
you can think of who become Football.
Yeah, just I don't know how much people know this, but in the 90s, Manchester United tried to open I don't know what do you call it, a clinic,
Football
academy
clinic in South America. Yeah, academy in South America.
We tried to open an academy. Well, I shouldn't say we tried. We opened an academy in Brazil, and I don't know how long it lasted, but nothing came of it. We didn't have a turnout of players coming into the youth setup at Old Trafford coming from it, so it didn't last very long. But we did try to set up something in South America before, so this is actually going to be the second time that United, but the approach this time is totally different.
It's absolutely genius. The way this approach has been done is that they would either buy a second division or a Division 1 club, and so basically a premier club or a championship club in an alternative, and they would build it. And that's what Ralph would oversee, the building of every single league they want to do. So they might tap into the MLS, they might tap into the Australian League, they might tap into the Belgian League, they might tap
which is very similar to the model of Manchester City, because Manchester City has clubs in the US. They have a club, if I'm not mistaken, in Belgium.
And they have one. No, they have one in Perth. They have Perth. Yeah, Perth.
Right, but they have another European club somewhere else in Europe. They have a club as well.
I believe they have a Belgian club, if I'm correct, and I think I have a feeling, if I'm correct, that's Anderlecht.
Yeah, so they, that has been Manchester City's model, and I don't know if the PSG hasn't really branched out as successfully as that.
PSG haven't branched out. I could see the Newcastle owners doing something similar if Newcastle stay in and start.
But that is what they want to do. They have made it clear they're looking to get into football in a big way.
The world. Yeah.
Yeah. So Manchester United is now building out its football brand, across different leagues.
Now, this is where it's going to be very, very interesting. And this is key to what Richard Arnold has been brought in to do. Because he has got such commercial success, he will commercialize the entire sporting group. That's why he was the main man behind this. Richard Arnold is seen as the man who can build alongside Ralph Rangnick the entire sporting group. Now, they're not just talking players here. You're talking staff. Imagine if you've got a staff member at Manchester United, you know he's going to come through good, but you know he needs experience. And you can send him to maybe become an assistant manager or a manager in Australia and then bring him back. What does that do for the group? You see, Man City was smart. They always had potential managers that they wanted out to replace certain managers. So they used Vieira. Vieira was if I'm correct, Vieira was out in New York managing them. So he got experience.
Yeah, I think his first, after he had a very short stint in the youth team.
Yeah, he went out and became manager
in Manchester. They sent him to the US to manage.
So this is what Manchester United are looking at right now, not just the players, the staffing as well, because they'll gain experience, they'll gain cultural experience, other ways of coaching. They'll be able to, if they're South America, Brazilians play football very differently to, for instance, the English league. They'll learn different philosophies, different types of football, different
And we'll also
dimensions
have
of
a
football.
direct, as you mentioned earlier, we'll have a direct access into that pool of talent. I mean, it's one
Exactly.
thing to send a scout to look at somebody in another league. Is another thing when you have permanent staff that are looking at these players week in, week out in this
See,
league. You know, you're
here's
going
the
to be
irony
able to
behind what you're saying.
identify the real stars.
So when you have a group, how many people will turn around and say, you know what? Say for instance, I'm just using this example. Say Sao Paulo, we bought Sao Paulo, and you know Sao Paulo is linked to Manchester United, and you could go and play for Cruzeiro in Brazil. Who would you rather push for?
Well,
Sao Paulo or
any
Cruzeiro?
player that has an opportunity to play for a club in their home country that is linked to a major club in Europe, they're going to go to play for the club that is linked to a major club in Europe because they see it
Now,
as a shorter, a shorter distance or shorter opportunity to get into Europe, which is where most South American players want to be. They want to be playing in Europe.
yeah, so obviously the money, the taxes, the third party ownership's not allowed, so they're going to look to do that. And so it's a huge thing what the Glazers done, what Richard Arnold's doing. Now, Richard Arnold is going to be very similar to David Gill. He's going to assist the manager and the technical staff to build a club. He's not going to interfere with decisions, but he will assist them if they need help to bring a deal over the line. He will help.
And
Now,
this is before we shut it down. I really wanted to touch on that a little bit because we had Ed Woodward before. That was him and Matt Judge was kind of in every pie, so to speak. They were doing the
yep,
commercial
pretty
side.
much.
They were dealing with contracts. They were signing off on scouting reports, who we should buy, who we shouldn't buy, and now with Richard Arnold, his approach is going to be different. Talk about that specifically. How exactly, what has Richard Arnold said? How is he going to approach, being the CEO of Manchester United? That was different to how Ed was doing it.
First of all, Ed was a vice executive chairman. There's two different type of roles. I
No,
think
I
the first
know,
one's
but
understanding.
I mean, he
Now,
was, running the thing
Richard
before.
won't have to deal with any of the share stuff. That will now be pushed onto Cliff Batty for the finance as the CFO. He will have to deal with all our finances, etc. Now, the commercial side, Richard Arnold will still oversee to a certain extent, and the playing side. But
Now, when you
he
say
needs to
commercial side, what are we talking about? Sponsorship
pick
deals?
sponsors. Yeah, correct. He will oversee that entire team. Now, in terms of the football side, the people that will make the decisions on which players we're which players we're selling, will be Darren Fletcher, John Murtagh, and Ralph Rangnick. It doesn't matter which manager comes in. They have those three are working as a pyramid, and they have a specific triangle. You can twist it any way you want. Those three will make the final decisions on which players are coming in. They
And
have a
this model,
specific pool and talent that they're working on.
this model is a lot closer to the Chelsea model, where managers may come or managers may go, but there is a hierarchy at the club that decides which players they're going to loan, who they're looking to buy. I mean, I'm not saying that a new manager can't have an influence on who he wants. He can't recommend, but the club organizes its structure not just based on
Correct.
managers, but
So
based on a
basically,
kind of vision for the club.
the way it's going to work now is that say Mauricio Pochettino comes in and they set up a model where they're only going after players 23 and younger. Okay, so they're not buying anyone over 23. Mauricio Pochettino, they'll have a dossier of maybe 100 right backs, 23 and younger. They'll weigh up, they'll use Opta stats, they'll use Ultimate stats, they'll use every stats they can. They'll dig into their personal history. And then the manager will then turn around and say, okay, this is one, this is my number, I would want this as my number one, I'd want this as two, I'd want this at three. But the manager will then agree that with John Murtagh, Darren Fletcher, and obviously Ralph Rangnick. And then what will then happen is John Murtagh will then contact the club and start doing the work. Darren Fletcher will obviously be the technical aspect of linking that into the first team, and then Ralph Rangnick will oversee all of it. That's how it's going to work. So the manager will get who he wants to a certain extent, but don't think they're not just going to. It's not going to be down to the manager. There's a whole scouting team and a decision team. But in
And the
terms of the
way
manager, go ahead. Sorry, your question.
no, I was just gonna to continue to expand your point. And so in effect, instead of the likes of Ed Woodward and Matt Judge, accountants running the football side, it is a pyramid of football people that are
Yep,
going to be dealing with getting players and facilitating the football side. Where even though Richard Arnold is the umbrella, he's above it all. He is going to be more focused on the commercial side, and that
correct.
is
Yeah.
one of the that is no that is my hope. My hope is that this transition is really going to bring long-term success, and that is why I wanted us to do this program, and let this be our first program on the Chad and Jody Show, simply because you know we know that a fish rots from the head down.
Yeah.
A big part of why Manchester United is in the mess we are in today is because of Edward Wood. Yes, Edward Wood has made the club value go up astronomically.
Yep.
Commercially, we have been a great success. So, the
Completely.
off the field stuff has been great. The on the
On the
field
field where we
stuff
struggled.
has been poor. And now with this new structure, we're going to have football people dealing with football stuff. And we would hope that we would reap the rewards of that sooner rather than later. Go ahead.
So here's the kicker, and this is where it's actually going. We heard that there was a board that obviously all had opinions on what players to buy and what man.
Again, a board full of people that don't know anything about football. Ooh, wow. I see Jody sticking on me there. So let's do this and hope that he is back sooner than soon.
Support the United Hour. Click that like button and subscribe.
All right. So Jody is still frozen. What it is Jody was going to say is that the board was heavily involved in making on the field decisions as well. So you had Edward Ward and you had Matt Judge and you had the board that were involved, and they would put in their 2 cents on who we should buy and things we should do on the field stuff. And the reality is the people on the board, what did they know about football? The Glazers know about American football, right? They know about NFL. What they know about soccer? They don't know nothing about soccer. So is the decisions we made, the money we spend. If you look at the contract situation, one of the reasons it is difficult for Manchester United to sell players is because we have players that aren't good enough on large contracts. So even when we loan players out, you have clubs asking us to pay some of the fee, pay some of the wages. It's ridiculous. And one of the reasons that we ended up in this situation is because we had non-footballing people making football decisions, on the field decisions. So now with this new arrangement, we're not going to be having that. I think Jody is back with us.
Sorry about that, guys. Obviously, you know how technology works. Sometimes you're there, sometimes you're not. So I do apologise. Look, furthermore, what it's trying to do, obviously, we're looking to improve our on-field, and the problem is we've been very reactionary. Now, obviously, Chad obviously explained that we've been reactionary in the market for a long time, for what, 7, 8 years. But this goes back a lot of time. This goes back to maybe 2008. As soon as City were bought by Sheikh Mansour, we all know what happened. We became reactionary in the market, and we stopped concentrating on our academy and scouting forward. Now, this places a lot of blame on, for instance, not a lot of blame, but it starts with Sir Alex, David Gill. It transfers to Ed Woodward. Ed Woodward took it a lot further and worse than obviously than obviously David Gill and Sir Alex Ferguson. But what they're trying to clear up right now is the reactionary buys. We buys that may improve this commercially, and this is what Ralph was brought in to do, and this is what Richard Arnold wants to do. He wants us to get back to having a history of winning. When we are winning commercially, we're going to be more successful by 200-300%. Once we win one trophy, and then the second trophy, and then the third, and then the fourth trophy comes, Manchester United just grows commercially as well. And it takes, I've heard Jamie Carragher say this a million times, it takes one player to have that spark. At the moment, we all thought it was going to be Ronaldo, but we're seeing what we're seeing in the changing room. Richard Arnold has now laid down the law with that, and it's going to be released very shortly. It's going to come out where it says anyone who doesn't want to be here and doesn't want to play for the club will not become a burden on the club. You are welcome to leave, and we will let you leave. So that's the kind of approach he's going to take. He's very hardline, he's very no nonsense, and he's not soft in negotiations. He has driven some of the biggest deals. Ed Woodward gets the credit, but it was Richard Arnold that did the work. So I expect to see great things from Richard Arnold. I'm happy to see the back of Ed Woodward. I think as much as I've supported him, and Chad knows this, for his work off the field, I think you've put us in a position where we have been absolutely dreadful on the field. And I'm happy now to see Darren Fletcher, John Murtagh, Ralph Rangnick, and whoever our next manager is, leading the way for our player transfer. So I'm really looking forward to see some of the names we get.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So, guys, we just, as I said, the whole idea behind the show, and we're going to be trying to drop at least one show a week, is to get in depth in what's going on in different aspects of the club or different aspects of football. So, Jody, thanks for your time today. And,
Guys, look forward to the Chad Jody Show. Like, subscribe, and drop messages. Any comments, any questions you have, we'll try our best to answer them. And as we say, I'll let Chad finish off the last lineup.
As I always say, Red Devils, we don't die, we multiply. God bless everybody.
Hey, if you appreciate what we're doing here at the United Hour, please like, please subscribe, and let's grow this community.